this video, we're going to talk about GTO Step 2, setting goals and desired outcomes. So GTO Step 2 is oriented towards asking the overarching question, what do you want to accomplish and for whom? It takes us from a big picture general vision of the problem we are trying to solve, that this problem derives very specifically from GTO Step 1. That outcome you got from GTO Step 1, that prioritized need, this is the general vision here. We want to do something to address that need. And it moves us kind of like a funnel from this general vision all the way down to very specific and measurable outcomes. So GTO Step 2 is that funneling. We now know that there's a problem in our community that we want to solve, and this is how we're going to do it in a very specific and measurable way. There are 3 parts to GTO Step 2. The first part is identifying a target audience. The second part is identifying goals. And the third part is breaking those goals into very specific desired outcomes. So this first part, identifying a target audience, this falls pretty directly from the needs assessment in GTO Step 1. Recall that at the end of GTO Step 1, you had a sense of the problem that you were trying to solve. You really dove deep into those risk and protective factors. You identified the gaps and the problem areas. You figured out which of those gaps or problem areas you're able to feasibly change and that are changeable. And then you said, well, who can we change them for? This is the target audience. If that's the problem, who are we fixing that problem for? What is the population that you want to serve? And you want to get as specific as possible. You want to know them well, because knowing them better now will help you select a program that could fit their needs better in the future. So identify this through your needs and resource assessment and really take time to get to know these folks well. In the PRISM project, our target audience right now are elders with dementia. So once you know your target audience, what is it that you want to change? So the target audience goes straight to your goals. What is it you want to change for those people? So where do these goals come from? How do you set goals? Well, they come from this needs and resource assessment. So recall that when we did the needs and resource assessment, we came out with all of these needs. We identified all of these different drivers, determinants of behavior, all these risk and protective factors, the problem areas. We identified all these things, and in that last step of the needs and resource assessment, we prioritized, we interpreted and then prioritized which of these needs we want to intervene on. We prioritized those factors that were changeable, that were malleable to change, and that we could feasibly do. So from that, what I have on the screen here are, what I'm trying to illustrate are that there are a bunch of needs, but only those ones with asterisks are those that are changeable and that we could feasibly change. Those are the ones that we're going to intervene with. And from that comes a set of goals. So it comes directly from your needs. We're not recreating a wheel here. So if we find that in our needs assessment of elders with dementia, that we find that there's a lack of physical activity, that these folks are not physically active, and that is getting in the way of mental decline, and that mental decline is getting in the way of their quality of life, well, then we could set up a goal to increase their physical activity, right? It's directly related. There's a logical link between what your needs are in the last GTO step and the goals that come out of this GTO step. So a goal is the broad change you want to make in your target population. It's the impact. What impact do you want to have? On the screen, I have a magician's wand, because I like to think about goals kind of like a magician's wand. If I had a magic wand and I could, shake it over your district or sub-district, what is the impact you would like me to have? What magic can I spray on your district to make a change? What is the change you would like to see? What's the wish you'd like to make the context or the people that are living there, to service them better? How can you service your target population better? What change would you like to see? Well, how do you, so let's say we want to improve the quality of life amongst elders with dementia. Well, how do we know if that has been met? And one of the challenges with goals, when we start to think about those broad changes or those broad impacts, is that they're not measurable. They're not specific enough. They're these big impacts that we want to change. And indeed, many times when we do implementation work, that's where most people stop. They make this broad statement, this big change. We want everybody to be healthier in 20 years, or we want all children to, you know, live happy lives. But those are big, broad, impactful statements, but they're not measurable. They're not specific enough. And so this is where desired outcomes come in. So once we know what we want to do in general, the impact we want to make, what we want to, you know, wave our magic wand on and get the outcomes we want to see, now it's time to get specific. These are the desired outcomes. This is really a fundamental part of the GTO process. So from your goals, the broad change you want to make in the target population, that impact, you pull out a set of desired outcomes. So if your goal is like the umbrella, underneath it, you've got a bunch of desired outcomes that inch your way towards your goal. So the desired outcomes are the very specific changes that you want to see. There's specific statements that relate to either knowledge, attitudes, skills, or behaviors. They're very specific things. These are the things that people are going to do differently. They're specific, they're measurable. We can measure them so we know if we got them, we can evaluate them. They're attainable, right? So sometimes we see people make goals that are so lofty and big that they're not really realistic. They're not attainable. And so you want to make sure your goals are something you could feasibly achieve. They've got to be relevant to the cultural context, and they've got to be time sensitive. They have to be achievable within, you know, a reasonable amount of time that you could evaluate them. So desired outcomes are just very concrete ways you will know if your goal is being met. They're baby steps on the way to reaching your big impact. By attaining your desired outcomes, you reach your goal, you have your impact. So there are 3 types of desired outcomes we could set: short-term, medium-term, and long-term. We encourage you to set all 3 of these. There is a tendency amongst folks to want to just set the long-term goals and desired outcomes. The problem with that is you want to have success in the interim. You want to show that you're having success along the way. And then over time, you reach these long-term desired outcomes. But when you only focus on the long-term, especially when you only focus on the broad impact, you lose sight of the direction you're moving in, and it could become demotivating. So I strongly encourage you to think about short-term objectives or short-term desired outcomes. What do you want to accomplish? What's feasible to accomplish in the next 6 months to 1 year? Then medium-term, maybe 2 years to 5 years, and then long-term beyond 5 years. What are very specific behaviors? What are changes in people's knowledge, changes in people's skills, changes in people's behaviors that you want to see in the short term, medium, and long term? And each one of those builds upon each other and leads up to the broad impact or goal that you want to achieve. So I'm going to now go through some examples of how to specify a desired outcome, what this actually looks like. So when we're talking about desired outcomes, there are 5 specific questions that you want to answer. What will change? So what is the very specific change in knowledge, skills, or behaviors that you want to change? For whom? Who's going to make that change? When would you like to see that change achieved by? How much change will you see? And how will we know that change occurred? So those are the 5 questions that I'm going to walk through in this example to help you understand what a desired outcome looks like. So for example, if our goal, if the impact we're trying to make is to improve the quality of life for elders with dementia, then a possible desired outcome could be, by 2021, elders who participate in a physical activity intervention will increase physical activity by 30 minutes each day as measured by family report. So let's break that down. What's going to change? Well, we're going to increase physical activity. That is a very specific behavior that we're going to change. Physical activity will increase. For whom? Well, for whom will be elders who participate in the physical activity intervention. It may be all elders in the long term, but for this very specific desired outcome, I'm only talking about, this is a short-term outcome, and I'm only talking about those who are participating in our intervention. By when? By 2021. This is probably a short-term outcome. By how much? By 30 minutes each day. And how are we going to measure this? By family report. Ideally, you would have a very specific way to measure it. For example, a scale that you're going to use. But for this example, I just put family report. So as you could see in this one sentence, we were able to answer all 5 of those questions. What will change the behavior of physical activity? For whom? Elders who participated in the physical activity intervention. By when? By the year 2021. By how much? 30 minutes each day. And how will it be measured? Family report. Here's another example. By the year 2022, elders who participate in the physical activity intervention will experience less cognitive decline as measured by formal assessments. What will change? Less cognitive decline. That's an ability. For whom? Elders who participated in the intervention. By when? 2022. I don't have by how much here because I don't know the content of cognitive decline and what a realistic lessening of cognitive decline would be, but for content experts, they would be able to add that in. And how will that be measured? Some formal assessment, some standardized assessment of cognition, which if I was really doing this, I would put that in, but just for an example, I don't have that. So I have a GTO worksheet linked in this TA Training Academy. You could click the button and download it. And to do this worksheet, you are prompted to fill in your target population here. I encourage you to work with your team, that needs assessment team that you put together in the past GTO step. You may want to use them, or you might want to use other folks that could contribute. But identify a target population, and then think about what the broad problem you want to solve is. What are the needs that you pulled out in the needs assessment that were prioritized? What is the impact you'd like to have? And write it here. And then in the desired outcome section, in the large rectangular box, let me circle that for you. In this section here, you're going to write the statements like I had in the previous slides. To get to this part, answer each one of these questions individually. What will change? This is either a knowledge, see if I can do this well, a skill or an ability. It's a little hard to write on the screen. In this section, you'll write for whom. In this line, you'll write by how much, by when, and how will it be measured. And once you have this all filled out, you'll insert it here and have a very specific, high quality desired outcome statement. You may have multiple desired outcomes for each goal. Oftentimes, people like to use the rule of thumb of having 3 to 5 desired outcomes for each goal, and each desired outcome targets a specific aspect of that goal, or perhaps small, short-term, medium-term, long-term aspects of the goal. It's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just about thinking through what you want to achieve, by when, and for whom. So thank you very much. This is the end of the Step 2 video, and if you need any support or me to look at the goals and desired outcomes that are written, I am happy to, and to provide you some feedback on those. I will see you over in the next video where we take these goals and desired outcomes that we specified and translate that to an effective program.